When my son passed away, his widow inherited their Vermont estate and a hefty $25 million, and then she turned around and kicked me out, telling me, "You don't belong here anymore. Go rot in a shelter." But only days later, the family attorney chuckled and said, "Did you catch every word of the will?" What came next sent her into full-blown panic and left her gasping for air. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to our channel, True Family Revenge Stories, where we uncover the most shocking, emotional, and jaw-dropping tales of betrayal and justice. Smash that like button if you believe in karma, and tell us in the comments, what time is it where you are right now? The pine trees swayed gently beneath a cloudy Vermont sky, heavy with the promise of spring rain. The air smelled of wet bark and tulips. 42 people surrounded the grave of my son, Darren, their coats black and solemn like shadows draped across the bright green of new grass. I clutched Darren's fourth-grade photo in my trembling hand, its corners rounded and soft from decades of keeping it close. My boy, my only son, was gone. 47 years old, and cancer still won. Serena, his wife of barely 3 years, stood center stage like some grieving queen, decked out in what looked like a custom designer dress, probably worth more than my pension check. Her expression was carved from ice and mascara. Her manicured fingers with blood-red nails draped gently over the casket like a photographer had posed her there. The pastor was mid-sentence about eternal peace when Serena made her move. Her heels clicked like gunshots on the stone path as she approached me, wearing a carefully arranged mask of sympathy. "Arthur," she said, voice sugar-coated but loud enough to draw attention from the Greens and the Munsons. Her hand grazed my shoulder with the kind of touch you use on fine china. "I hope you're not planning to stay at my house after this." The words chilled me. Several guests glanced in our direction. They heard it. Everyone did. I looked her dead in the eye. That was Darren's home. She blinked, and her tone turned syrupy with venom. "Was Darren's home. Now it's mine. Darren left it all to his loving wife." Mrs. Green gasped behind me. George Munson took a step forward. They'd watched Darren grow up, start his landscaping company, build his reputation from scratch. "We haven't even read the will," I said. Serena laughed, a cold, sharp laugh right there at the funeral. "What's to read? I'm his wife. Who else would he leave it to?" The pastor faltered, glanced our way, then rushed to finish his prayer. Dirt hit the casket. Each scoop sounded like thunder in my chest. But Serena's smirk, her victorious little grin as she turned back to the crowd, that seared itself into me. She had rehearsed this moment. She had calculated it to wound. This wasn't grief. This was a conquest. And I realized something. Serena wasn't mourning Darren. She was eliminating obstacles. And I was the biggest one. She moved on to accept condolences while I stood alone, ignored, holding Darren's childhood photo like a shield. As his casket descended into the earth, I made a silent vow. This game Serena thought she had mastered, it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The rain began. The guests left. I remained, standing beside a crooked marker that barely bore his name. Serena's laugh rang out from across the cemetery, mingling with the murmurs of departing guests. She had them captivated, playing the misunderstood widow. But I could see the performance for what it was. I placed a single red rose on the fresh earth. The same kind his mother, God rest her soul, used to grow in our backyard. My arthritis flared as I straightened up, pain reminding me of every hard year I'd lived. And then I heard her say it. "Well, I guess it's time to talk about where Arthur's going now." The hairs on my neck stood up. She was approaching, flanked by her entourage. Local banker, funeral director, 2 of Darren's employees, like a firing squad dressed in cashmere. "Arthur," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You do understand, right? That Darren left everything to me." I didn't flinch. "We haven't read the full will." Her eyes narrowed. "What do you think is going to be in there? A condo in Florida for you?" Darren knew I'd need the house, the money, and his accounts. I was his wife. He loved me. Enough to kick out his father? She smirked. "He knew you'd try to cling to the past. He said you'd make a scene." Another lie. But she delivered it like gospel. Then I heard a voice, soft but firm. Arthur, you all right? It was Hank Morris, my best friend of 40 years, standing at the edge of the parking lot near his rusted pickup. Just practical matters, Serena said sweetly. Practical can wait, Hank replied, moving beside me. Man just buried his son. She barely concealed her annoyance. Which is why I'm hosting a memorial gathering at the house. Refreshments, a proper send-off. I hadn't heard a word about it, but the guests took it as gospel. She was charming again. Generous. Magnanimous. A hostess. Will you come, Arthur? She asked, voice dripping with fake warmth. We want all of Darren's family there. Family. That word had become a weapon. I nodded once. But in my heart, I was already preparing for war. The drive back to the house was quiet, filled only with the sound of gravel crunching beneath the tires. Clyde sat stiffly in the passenger seat of Obie's truck, his eyes staring ahead but seeing something far away. Memories, regrets, and the looming reality that he might no longer have a home. Obie glanced over, the weight of his friend's silence heavy in the cab. You sure you don't want to come home with me tonight? He asked. Clyde shook his head slowly. No, Obie. If she's going to throw me out, I want her to do it straight to my face, not behind my back. Obie nodded. He didn't like it, but he respected it. They pulled up the long driveway of the estate, now eerily quiet. The crowd from the reception had dwindled. Only Zella's car and Clyde's old Ford pickup remained. The house, once a warm place filled with laughter and family, stood cold and imposing. As Clyde stepped out, the smell of roses greeted him, the ones Jeffrey's mother had planted decades ago. He paused for a moment at the rose bushes before making his way up the porch. The door creaked as he entered, the familiar scent of wood polish and old paper hitting him like a wave. Zella was in the dining room, arranging the last of the crystal glasses, her movements sharp, deliberate. Her heels echoed on the polished floor as she turned to see Clyde. "Back so soon?" she asked, not hiding the irritation in her voice. "It's still my home for now," Clyde replied, steady. Zella gave a short, mirthless laugh. "You keep saying that like it means something. You heard the will." "No. I heard part of it. The rest is still to come." Zella rolled her eyes and turned away. "Suit yourself. Just stay out of my way." Clyde made his way upstairs, passing portraits of his family lining the staircase. He paused at one, Jeffrey at 12, standing with a hammer in one hand and a crooked birdhouse in the other. Clyde had taken that photo the summer they built the treehouse in the backyard. He reached his room, small but comfortable, and began packing a few essentials. He didn't know where he'd end up, but he knew it wouldn't be here. Not if Zella had her way. Downstairs, Zella was already on the phone, her voice sharp, businesslike. "Yes, everything. The accounts, the property, the business. I want them transferred immediately." She was liquidating. Fast. Clyde sat on the edge of the bed, the duffel bag at his feet only half filled. His eyes wandered to the small dresser by the window. He opened the top drawer and pulled out a stack of letters, old, yellowed envelopes addressed in Jeffrey's handwriting. Some were never opened. Letters from college. Business notes. A Father's Day card from 1998. He ran his fingers over the paper, the ache in his chest deepening. Morning came quickly. Clyde hadn't slept. He rose with the sun, the house eerily still. He heard Zella downstairs, probably preparing another day of gloating. He came down the stairs slowly, wearing his best shirt and freshly polished boots. Zella looked up from her laptop. "Well, you're dressed like you're going to court." "Maybe I am." Before she could respond, the doorbell rang. It was Jasper Thompson. Zella's eyes narrowed. "Why is the lawyer here again?" "You'll see." They gathered in the sitting room, the same place where the abbreviated will had been read. Thompson looked calm, collected. He carried a briefcase filled with documents. "Mrs. Wells, Mr. Wells," he greeted them both. "I thought we were done with the legal nonsense," Zella snapped. "We're just getting started," Clyde said. Thompson opened his briefcase and pulled out the full, unabridged will. "Mrs. Wells, there is a clause that was not read during yesterday's ceremony, due to the public nature and the deceased's specific instructions. Clause 15b. Zella crossed her arms. What now? Thompson read aloud. To my wife, Zella Marie Wells, I bequeath the house at 203 Briarwood Lane, its contents, and the sum of $25 million, on the condition that she provide housing and proper care to my father, Clyde Samuel Wells, for the remainder of his natural life. Should this condition be violated? Zella's mouth dropped open. Thompson continued, the entire inheritance shall revert to the Jeffrey Wells Foundation for Cancer Research. Silence. Clyde looked Zella straight in the eyes. I recorded everything. I documented your threats, your insults, and the moment you told me to die in a trash heap. Zella turned pale. Thompson laid the documents on the table. Mrs. Wells, based on this evidence and your own public behavior yesterday, you violate the conditional inheritance. Effective immediately, the estate reverts to the foundation. She lunged for the papers. You can't do this. You can't take everything from me. You did that yourself, Clyde said quietly. Thompson packed his briefcase. The foundation has granted Mr. Wells permanent residence. You may remain, Mrs. Wells, but under his authority, not yours. Zella's screams followed them as they stepped outside into the quiet Texas morning. For the first time in days, Clyde felt something real. Peace. The motel room was quiet, except for the distant hum of traffic and the occasional clatter of footsteps in the hallway. Martin sat at the small laminate desk, the pale morning light seeping through the heavy beige curtains. His coffee had gone cold in the chipped ceramic mug. He wasn't sure how long he'd been staring at the same sentence in the will. Should this condition be violated through eviction, verbal abuse, or failure to provide respectful treatment, the entire inheritance shall immediately revert to the Christopher Reyes Community Trust. He read it again, and again. Jasper's words from the day before kept echoing in his mind. Christopher knew what she was capable of. This clause is your shield. Martin glanced at the clock. 9:21 a.m. They were scheduled to visit Evelyn's house at 3 p.m. Well, what had been Evelyn's house just 2 days ago? The one she declared was hers with that icy, smug smile. Now, she was about to learn that sometimes the dead speak louder than the living. Martin closed the folder and ran a hand through his thinning silver hair. His body ached from the motel bed, but something deeper, an ache for justice, for his son, for everything lost, pushed him forward. At 2:40 p.m., Martin and Jasper pulled into the cul-de-sac in Jasper's dark gray Lexus. The sky was overcast again, casting the quiet suburban street in a moody light. Evelyn's BMW sat in the driveway, as spotless and polished as ever. A few other cars lined the street, her sister's SUV, a Lexus that belonged to a friend from the country club, and the realtor's car. Martin recognized the company logo. She was wasting no time. As they stepped onto the porch, the door swung open. Evelyn stood there in white linen pants and a navy silk blouse, hair perfectly curled, her face done up as if for a magazine shoot. Behind her, the house buzzed with activity. People laughing in the kitchen, wine glasses clinking, soft jazz playing from the surround sound speakers. "Martin," she said, tone cool and dismissive. "You're early." "We're right on time," Jasper replied, holding the manila envelope at his side. "May we come in?" Evelyn hesitated, eyeing the folder, but then stepped aside. "Make it quick. We're hosting guests." They walked past the foyer into the spacious living room. The same space where, just 36 hours ago, Evelyn had humiliated Martin in front of 24 guests, stripping him of dignity with each smirk and snide comment. Now, she seemed uneasy. Jasper's calm demeanor had that effect. Martin stayed quiet, letting the silence speak. Jasper opened the envelope, withdrawing the complete version of the will and laying it out on the glass coffee table. Evelyn's perfectly manicured nails tapped on her wine glass as she watched. Her sister, Lorraine, leaned in curiously from the kitchen doorway. "What's all this?" Evelyn asked. "The full reading of Christopher's last will and testament," Jasper said. "Not the summary you sat through in the living room. This includes Section 14C, which is rather important." "More legal nonsense," Evelyn scoffed. "We already did the reading. I got the house, the accounts, the business assets. End of story." Jasper shook his head slowly. "Actually, no. This document includes a conditional clause. One that changes everything." She narrowed her eyes, still not quite understanding. Go on. Martin watched her face as Jasper read aloud. On the condition that she provides proper care and dignified housing for my father, Martin Reyes, until his natural death. Should this condition be violated through eviction, verbal abuse, or failure to provide respectful treatment, the entire inheritance shall immediately revert to the Christopher Reyes Community Trust. Lorraine gasped audibly. Evelyn's wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the tile floor. She didn't react. Her gaze was locked on the document. That's absurd, she said finally, voice brittle. You can't prove anything. Martin stepped forward. You told me to die in the trash outside your house. You made me leave with 2 suitcases. I slept in a motel last night while you celebrated your payday. You're twisting what happened, she snapped. You were being difficult. Difficult? Jasper echoed. Asking to remain in his son's home, the home he helped pay for and maintain for years, is difficult? Evelyn turned toward her sister. Lorraine, tell them. You were here. Lorraine raised her hands. Evie, I heard you say things. Things you shouldn't have. I told you not to push him out. Evelyn's face crumpled for a moment before hardening again. Even if it's true, he's not pressing charges. You can't take the house. Martin quietly placed a small recorder on the table. I recorded the entire conversation. Every word you said to me after the guests left. Evelyn stared at the device like it had fangs. You recorded me, she whispered. I wasn't planning to. But something told me I might need to. Chris always said you were unpredictable. Jasper added, the inheritance clause is ironclad. The moment you violated those conditions, legal ownership reverted. We've already filed paperwork with the county registrar. I'll sue, Evelyn hissed. You're welcome to try, Jasper said, stacking the papers calmly. But everything you've said and done since Christopher's funeral will be introduced as evidence. Including today. Silence fell across the room like a winter storm. Evelyn finally sank into a chair. So, it's all gone? The foundation will allow you to remain as a tenant, Martin said, stepping forward. You'll follow house rules. You'll treat this space like a home, not a showroom. She looked up at him with raw hatred. You're enjoying this? No. I'm grieving my son, he replied. But I won't grieve alone. And I won't be disrespected in the house we built together. She didn't respond. Lorraine moved toward her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. I suggest you take some time to reflect, Jasper said. You're fortunate the Foundation is offering leniency. Most would have you out within the hour. Martin turned, walking toward the front door. Pack your pride away, Evelyn. You'll find it doesn't go far in a charity house. He stepped onto the porch. The sun had finally broken through the clouds.